Yeah, we had a lot of registrants today, so I think it was a record.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have. Everyone's flooding in now. Welcome, everybody. We're just getting a minute or two to get signed in and comfortable, and then we'll get underway and introduce ourselves formally. Yeah, it's nice to have everyone with us today.
Yeah, and for those that are here, if you wouldn't mind typing in the chat which city or country you're viewing the webinar tonight from, and that way we have an idea.
Yeah, because I think Sarush and I live on the west coast of Canada, so it's 2 p.m. for us, and we'd probably be the earliest time zone from anybody here.
Hi to everyone.
Yes, it'd be later for everybody else, unless you're in Vancouver or British Columbia, I should say. Let's see. Oh, we do have someone from Vancouver. Yeah. A couple here, but looks like we're all spread out.
Calgary, Toronto,
Toronto. And Patrick works out of Toronto. So you'd be getting close for supper time where you live.
Big city.
Yep.
Mississauga is close, yeah. And London,
Ontario.
Brampton, Kitchener, okay.
Yeah, we always have to say London, Ontario, as of course there's another London out there too.
Oh, really? Nice. Brazil.
Like from Brazil.
Ooh. My eyes always open wide when I see somebody who I consider very far away. Like Canada's a big country, but South America seems far. So welcome, Marcos from Rio. Well, I'd like to go to Rio someday, as a matter of fact. I've never been.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to. Yeah.
I'd love to.
That'd be beautiful. And the Yukon. Lisa's from the Yukon.
Nice.
I want to go there too. I was so concerned about the fires and that this year. I hope everything's okay up there.
Mexico.
Mexico, nice.
Mexico. I hope my Spanish. Cambridge, Nigeria. I knew it was a matter of time. We're getting lots and lots more people from Nigeria in common in our webinars, and it's just nice to see us sort of
expanding. We have so many people from Brampton today.
Yeah,
that's like maybe a 15-minute drive from where I am.
Oh, really?
Okay.
You're on the outskirts.
Yeah, I'm in Etobicoke. It's kind of like the western fringe of the city of Toronto. Yep.
And Toronto is just so big. It's so spread out, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Mohammed, we'll talk about discount codes in just a moment. So hang tight and we'll explain that when we get going. Yeah, sometimes that happens. We'll talk about why. Sorry, I'm stretching. Ooh, Jordan. It's from Jordan. Yeah, very nice. Okay, it looks like
Kenneth from Manila, Philippines.
Philippines is in. That's perfect. We just hit 100 people. So why don't we at least get started with some introductions and then we'll get underway, as we do have lots of content. So I don't know, Patrick, did you want to introduce us, and then Sarush can have a few and so on? Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so we're very happy to be bringing this third chapter of the CELPIP Focus webinar series. So as many of you know that have attended the previous two, we have Brandy and myself are from Prometric, which is the company that owns the CELPIP and CALE English tests. And then we have our great long-term partner, Sarush, who is the owner of ILIA Academy in the western part of Canada in Vancouver. So, and he is a licensed prep provider, an official prep provider with CELPIP and Prometric. So thanks for both being here, and take it away. So whoever wants to start.
Sure. Brandy, can I get started?
Absolutely, yes, please.
Thank you. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's joint CELPIP webinar between Prometric and ILIA English Academy. I'm Sarush Hazani, and I have the privilege of serving as the founder and owner of ILIA English Academy. Speaking on behalf of our team, I would like to convey our deep appreciation for your attendance today, as we strongly believe that you play a vital role in making this enriching learning opportunity possible. If you would like to know about our school, ILIA English Academy is an online language school headquartered in Vancouver, specializing in IELTS, CELPIP, ESL, French, and Spanish instruction. With a rich history spanning 28 years, we've been consistently offering courses to students worldwide. Our team of committed instructors can be found not only in Vancouver, but also in Toronto, Calgary, Montreal, and even as far as Costa Rica, because we also have Spanish classes, and our teacher is located in Costa Rica. So there are a few things which make us a little bit different. First of all our teachers are CELPIP certified with at least 15 years of professional background. They are very fast-paced in presenting courses. Normally, our students do not stay with us for a long time. I mean, like in a very short time, they cover all the courses that we have in our school if they want to study for IELTS, CELPIP, ESL, or any other languages. So they can cover everything in a very intensive style. And so that's why I use this adjective. We are very fast-paced. And also this is the adjective that many of our students use when they want to talk about us. Our price is also very reasonable. And in comparison with any other like schools, we are on an online school, so you can join our classes from anywhere in the world. And we provide you with lots of practice tests and different activities in the classes. So, and we make sure that you will be good when you're actually going for the actual test. About the courses that we have in our school, we do have the general English classes for basic, elementary, and pre-intermediate students. Power English classes for intermediate, upper intermediate, advanced students. We do IELTS preparation. We do bi-weekly IELTS mock tests, CELPIP preparation, CELPIP mock tests, CAL, CAEL preparation. We have job interview preparation classes. We have free discussion classes. We have a very special course. We have, I would say it's a very unique course. It is for grammar. We call it English Grammar Clinic. And we have essay writing for school and college students, French and Spanish. One thing that I would like to mention here, as participants in this webinar, you will enjoy some benefits. One, you will have exclusive access to complimentary study materials generously provided by Prometric, and also a fantastic opportunity to attend one free CELPIP class at ILIA English Academy. One free CELPIP class at ILIA English Academy. You will receive an email with a code from Prometric, or you can also text us on Instagram, and you can redeem that one free session. So let me provide you with some of our social media links. So this is our, we have a page on Telegram. Here is for the panelists. I think I'm making note to everyone here. Okay, now everybody can see it. This is our Telegram. The name of the group is CELPIP Up. So you can follow us there. And this is our Instagram. Here. This is our Instagram page. And also this is our website. If you would also like to Google us, this is the last link I'm going to share with you. And here. Can everybody see the links?
Yep.
Okay. Because yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I really like your Telegram group, Sarush. It's good to have a group of people together that are all kind of focused on one common goal, which is to do well on the CELPIP exam. So it's a good place to share feedback and news and stuff like that. So definitely recommend everybody to join the Telegram group. You can just do so on your phone on the Telegram app, and Sarush is moderating it, and he's a great instructor.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Patrick. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, I know it's good to have all those things at the beginning, and then we can share them at the end.
Yeah.
All right, so allow me to quickly introduce myself. My name is Brandy, and I am an online instructor with Prometric, which is the company that delivers the CELPIP language proficiency test. So again, we're happy to be collaborating with Sarush and ILIA English Academy in order to give you some support along your test taker journey, we'll call it. So today's episode is all about writing skills. Yes, there is listening and speaking and reading on CELPIP, but today we're going to focus exclusively on writing. So I'm just going to quickly run through some what I call housekeeping rules, just so we all know what to expect today. So we are a large group. We've got about 150 people here so far. So as you've probably already realized, we've muted your microphones by default, but we are going to use the chat box throughout this entire session. So as we go through some practice test questions from a real CELPIP test, I'm going to be asking all of you lots and lots of questions to gather your ideas for details. We're going to pretend that this is our test question. How would we approach this question on the test, and what kinds of ideas could we write about? So again, I'll be asking you to share your ideas in the chat box if you'd like to do so. You can make your comments public for everyone to see, which I encourage. Or if you're a little shy, that's okay too. You can always address your ideas to the hosts and panelists in the chat box. And then the only people here that would be able to read your comments are the staff. So the three of us, Patrick, Sarush, or myself. But I encourage you to be brave. I say there's no such thing as a silly idea. This is how we learn. So please share your comments there accordingly. You can ask us questions too. We are a big group, so I'm going to keep an eye on my screen and I'll try to answer some questions as we go. But whatever questions I can't get to right away, I've got Patrick and Sarush who can type with you back and forth in that chat box. So between the three of us, we've got you covered today. We'll answer anything you have. Looks like our sound's working fine, so that's great. We'll just keep going. If something should happen to your system as you go through the session though, and the sound all of a sudden quits, the best thing I'd advise is just log out of Zoom and log right back in again. That should fix any problems you might have. Okay, now you're most welcome to take notes today, but again, I think if you just follow along and put ideas into the chat box, that's probably the best way to, engage and participate and then remember things as well. You can take screenshots of any slides that you find really useful, but bear in mind that within a day or so, 24 hours, let's say, we will be emailing you with some helpful links. So you will receive a link to access a study pack of writing materials. So these materials will include some sample responses and test questions that we're looking at together today. So you'll have that all on your own to look at later at your leisure. So don't worry about frantically copying things down. We're also going to email you a little promotional code to redeem another free product that is geared towards reading and writing. It's called Accelerate. Now, one person, I think it was Mohammed, had written earlier as we logged on that he had issues trying to redeem that code last time. I will advise everyone that the company has a 50% off sale right now. It finishes in 2 hours, 4 o'clock or 4:30 Pacific time. So while that sale is ongoing, it's impossible to redeem any free product. So I guess by the time we're finished this webinar, that's a moot point. I mean, you'll be able to redeem your free products then. But if you should try to use a promo code when there's another promotion going on, that could be one reason why maybe the promotional code didn't work. So I just mentioned that as an aside. If you still have issues redeeming anything, please contact customer service immediately. And I see Patrick has already written in there to try to resolve that issue, which is great. Within this email, we're also going to give you a link to take you to a pre-recorded version of this same writing webinar. So we don't have this exact copy that we're doing today to send to you, but to make it easy, we keep one, we'll call it a master copy of each free webinar that we deliver with Prometric, and we keep that housed permanently on our YouTube channel. So the link in that email will take you right to the writing webinar recording, and you can watch whatever you need if you wanted to catch up. Okay, so again, this is me. I'll keep my camera on while I'm presenting. But you can see me here in the screen too. Again, my name's Brandy, and I've been working as a teacher for almost 24 years now, all said and done. I'm from Northern Ontario. My hometown is actually a 4-hour drive north of Toronto. It's called North Bay. Maybe you've heard of it. But I started teaching out there back in the late 1990s. and I moved to Vancouver in 2004. So I've been teaching ever since. Since I've come out west, I've been working with adult students, very much like yourselves, usually in a language-based capacity. So it's my pleasure today to provide some helpful language tips in the writing component, but also to put my knowledge about the CELPIP test to good use as well. So I've been instructing for CELPIP for about 4 years now, all said and done. So what I'd like to do for the remainder of our time, about an hour and 45 minutes we have, I'm going to first introduce what the CELPIP test looks like on the computer screen. So some of you in attendance, I actually recognize your names from other places. So we've done sessions before. I present so many of these free webinars on Zoom and YouTube and Instagram that I'm sure I've met some of you before. But if you're new to CELPIP, I do want to just make sure everybody understands what the test screens would look like, as the entire CELPIP test is done in front of a computer in a testing room. So we'll quickly look at some examples there and talk about how the writing test is scored. It's so important to know which skills you'll need to demonstrate if you'd like to maximize your score on the test. So we'll make part one really quick so we can spend most of our time today looking at the 2 writing tasks. So you will complete an email question on CELPIP, and the second task is to write an opinion and support it. So you'll have about 1 hour or so on the CELPIP test to do that. So again, I'll share with you a real test question today for each of these 2 writing tasks. We're going to gather ideas as a group and talk about how we might respond. And then we're going to look at actual responses from real test takers like yourselves who had these exact questions when they took CELPIP. And as a group, we'll read them through. We're going to discuss what we think these people did quite well, and perhaps where they still need to improve their writing skills. And then I'll explain to you what score they receive from the raters who give them a score. All right, and at the end of our session, I will talk a little bit more about our study materials. So we do have several free products that I'll mention first, and then we do have an online bookstore. And again, there is a sale that ends today, 50% off. All right, now there was a question, I'll defer it to Patrick. I don't know if you saw it, something about trying to purchase products in Nigeria in particular. So I don't know myself. Okay, I'll leave that to you then. I just wanted to address it before we moved on so that the writer didn't feel we were neglecting him. Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yep. Thanks, Brandy.
Okay, perfect. All right, so again, I mentioned you've got 2 writing tasks. You've got almost the same length of time for each task on your actual test. So close to 1 hour, we'll say, right? So the writing component comes third in the line of all 4 language skills that you will be completing. And this would be for your general test. So if you are applying for permanent residency status in Canada, you would need to take this test that assesses all 4 language skills that you see here. Okay, so about 1 hour or so is dedicated to the writing. And the word count is always, the word counter is always visible on screen, because as you can see, you are asked to achieve at least 150 words, up to 200 words. And that's part of your score. If you go too far over or too far under that, you won't score quite as high. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, all the questions on this test are going to be based on everyday situations. So I'm guessing you probably will have experienced a lot of these situations, or if you haven't, you can easily imagine doing so. So there shouldn't be any situations that really make you think and try hard to imagine. So I'm not going to read this particular question to you, as it's not the one we're using for focus today, but I wanted to point out the 2 features of the screens. So you can imagine sitting in front of your own workstation, taking your test, right? You're in one room. There might be about 30 other test takers with you, but you have your own computer station. So when you do the writing sections, you'll have the background information on the left, and it quickly tells you who you are and what's happening. And then you'll read the right-hand side of the screen. And for your email question, this is the side that tells you who you're supposed to email. And it gives you those 3 bulleted points that you see below. Most often you'll have 3. Sometimes you might even have 4. But those are going to be the details. We call them tasks. So these are the sort of the main ideas that you absolutely must include when you're writing. So you can take some of the words there if you needed to off the screen. But for the most part, we're hoping you can use your own vocabulary as you're writing. You'll score better that way. So you'll make up some details there. And a reminder again about the word count. Now, I know it says 150 to 200 words, but the raters who score your work, these are human raters. It's not AI, not for CELPIP. So there are at least 3 different raters, and they're going to be reading through these 2 responses you're giving, and they're going to give a score. They will be a bit flexible with word count. So they will actually accept 10% above or below that little word range there. So in effect, I suppose you could write 135 words up to 220 words, and you would not lose marks. But that being said, if you're only writing about 135 words, you probably aren't demonstrating as much detail or using as many interesting words and so on that will help boost your score. So I would strongly advise you try to write close to 200 words if you can within that 27-minute time frame on the test. I think it gives you more opportunity to demonstrate some creativity. But do know you won't lose marks if you go 10% above or below at the very least. Okay, and we know that task 1's an email, so we will use proper email structure. And again, we'll talk about that in a second. Your writing task 2 is not an email. It's actually a response survey, but it's structured the same way. You still have 2 sides of a computer screen. Of course, you're going to read the left-hand side and figure out what the situation is. When you look on the right-hand side, you're going to be faced with 2 different options. All right, you've got an option A and an option B right below there. So the trick here is to give your opinion. You have to choose one of those 2 options. And then the way to really do well on task 2 is to support that opinion with lots of reasons. And again, we'll brainstorm some ideas together today and look at what other people have come up with. Yeah, so Priya, I've already talked about the word count, so I'm going to leave that question for now. And Louise, good question. Can you score higher when you write exactly 150 words? I don't know. It really depends on the ideas you have. Let me show you the writer's score list, and you can probably answer that question yourself in just a second. So we'll come back to that. It all depends. Okay, so the question I was just showing you does display information at the top of the screen. At the very bottom, you can see the little writer space where you're going to actually do the typing. So this is sort of looking at the computer more from a distance, so you can see the whole page. The timer is always right up here in the top corner. So do keep an eye, and as it's counting backwards, you know, when you see that timer getting close to 0, you want to make sure that your email is almost finished. You know, whatever you've got typed into that space below is going to be submitted for marks as soon as that timer gets to 0. Now, if you do finish a little early, and sometimes people might, I would first recommend that you actually proofread your work. So read it back. You have your last opportunity to improve it any way you can. But if you're happy with it, you're most welcome to click next. So if you had 2 minutes left on this clock, but you wanted to finish up here and move on, click that next button, and the computer will just automatically move you forward to task 2. Okay, now the trick here is you can see for yourself there's no back button. So you will never be able to then change your mind and return back to a previous question. So only click next when you're ready to move on. And you also don't get to carry with you extra time. That's the other noteworthy detail, right? So you're only clicking next just to move forward a bit more quickly rather than sit and wait for the whole test to count down for you. Okay, now the word counter will be visible on screen, I pointed out. So this one says 9 words because that's what you can see in the writer space above. So keep an eye there. You want to get, I'd say, close to 200. Probably easier to get higher marks that way. There is a spell check, and somebody had asked about spell check just earlier, and I didn't answer you because I knew I'd be talking about it just now. So let's address it right on the spot. As you're typing away into that little white box, from time to time, the computer might not recognize a word that you've written. And when that happens, the computer is going to underline the word for you in red. It's not going to magically fix the word because the computer doesn't know what word you're intending to write. So it's up to you. When you see an underlined word, you would take your mouse and right click, just like you would in Microsoft Word. When you right click over that underlined word, the computer will pop open a small box of suggestions. There might be 3 or 4 vocabulary words there. So I would recommend you read the list. And if you see the word that you think is correct, click on that word, and the computer will switch out your spelling for you. All right. But again, it's completely up to you to make the decision as to which word you leave there to submit for marks. Because as you can see here on the left of my screen, I've got 6 words. These are examples of very commonly confused English words. So the first pair says staff and stuff. Those are both real English words, as are word and world, quite and quiet, and so on. There's so many pairs that sound similar, but they mean completely different things. So if you accidentally choose the wrong word, the computer won't know. It's not going to be able to figure out what meaning you imply. So it's really still up to you to read your work back and make sure that the words you've included there are exactly the words that you mean. So the computer is a help, but it's not magic. It's still really up to you and your brain power to figure out the rest. Okay, so again, coming back to, well, can I still do well with 150 words? You tell me after we talk about the checklist, because that's what we're going to do right now. So when the raters, the human examiners, are reading through your work, they're reading your work to see if you're demonstrating strengths across all 4 of these categories of skills. So the first one we're talking about here is about the content details. So the more interesting, the more specific, and the more focused your details are, the higher the quality of your work, and therefore the better the score would be as well. Okay, this means for every single main point or main idea that you include, you should have at least 1, if not 2, supporting details or examples. That's how you're going to achieve at least a level 9, if not higher. Okay, so keep that in mind. And of course, we want to organize our work easily. That's what coherence means. It's just putting your ideas down in a way so they all connect. Okay, now vocabulary is important too. So try your very best to demonstrate words, again, that are interesting and precise. So try not to use words like stuff and thing and so on. Those words are quite vague and they don't give you any detail at all. So again, the more precise your word choice, the more interesting, and the more variable, the better. So we don't want to just repeat the same words over and over. If we can demonstrate a good variety to the raters, they'll be happy with us and we'll achieve a better score. That being said, your vocabulary choices must be suitable. So we don't want to just throw in, a pile of long, complicated words with the hopes of impressing the raters, because if the words we're choosing don't make much sense in the context of what we're writing about, you're not going to score as well. So choose your words, suitably, but just try to make them specific if you can. Readability can be tough because it relies on you to have studied your grammar and paragraphing rules. So when you come into CELPIP, part of your score too comes from how easy it is you are making the reader's job to understand what it is you're writing on the screen. So I guess the first step would be sentence structure. We know we have to start a sentence with a capital letter and finish it with an end punctuation mark. All right, and I think when we're learning any language, we start off with short, simple sentences, but then once we practice further and develop our skills, hopefully we're able to draft longer, more complex structures. So again, the more complexity you can demonstrate in your writing, the better your score is going to be. So that's sentence structure. And then the next step would be organizing your sentences into actual paragraphs on screen. So we never want to submit one piece of writing that's a gigantic block of information. That makes it really difficult for the readers to understand where your ideas are beginning and ending. So again, paragraph rules are important, and it's important to know how to create proper paragraphs, I'd say, before you come into the test. Look at ways to connect ideas too. So try not to rely on those simple overused words like and, but, so. Try to be more imaginative. So can you connect sentences together using words like because, additionally, consequently, on the other hand, and so on. So again, the more variety you demonstrate, the better your score is going to be. And your grammar and your spelling and all of those other writing mechanic skills are going to count for part of your score too. We also have task fulfillment. So this is literally how well and how completely you're answering the question. So remember that question I showed you with the email? And there were those 3 bulleted points on screen. So to get a full mark for this category, you'd want to be able to offer ideas for each of those bulleted points. If you forget one or don't offer up much detail, your answer would be considered incomplete. So you might not score as well under this one area of task fulfillment. So again, address all tasks, make sure that your details are relevant, like they're actually on topic, and answer the question at hand. And your tone is important too. So if you are emailing a stranger, you'd probably use language that's a bit more formal. If you were emailing a friend, it might be okay to use some slang or idiomatic language. So that's what we mean by tone. How formal is your language, and is it appropriate? And again, word count has also been discussed already, so I'll say no more about that. Now, here's the trick with the scoring. This is what we really need to remember. Your score is never based on just one of these categories. Okay, and this is especially important, I'd say, for, say, people who speak English as a first language. I'll say people from Ireland, Australia, England, and so on. So if English is your first language, chances are you probably already have quite strong vocabulary. You've got that benefit coming into CELPIP. But even if your vocabulary is top-notch, if you're not giving any supporting details to extend your main ideas, if you're not organizing your work into paragraphs, and you go far too short with your word count and don't even address a part of the question, if you're scoring poorly in the other 3 areas here of this checklist, just doing very well in the one area of vocabulary is not going to help you climb the score chart ladder, as I call it. And I refer to it as a ladder because it looks like this. So the top score you might achieve in CELPIP would be a level 12, and that's considered very advanced proficiency. All right, and you can see the descriptor words sort of descend as we go down. So again, going back to our little scoring chart here, in order to boost your score a whole level, you're going to want to practice at home with this performance standard checklist in front of you. And we include this in your study pack. After you've written out your own work, read it back to yourself or work with a tutor or prep provider such as ILIA Academy, and make sure that you can identify strengths in all 4 of these categories. It's okay to have some weaknesses. Nobody's perfect. Even a level 12 response will probably have a few weaknesses here and there. But if you are consistently demonstrating more strengths in each of these 4 categories than you are weaknesses, that's how you're actually going to improve by level all the way up. Okay, and we call this particular session today a target 9+, because the skills that we're going to focus on today are hopefully going to give you ideas about how you might achieve at least a level 9. Level 9 is considered effective proficiency, and it's sort of the minimum benchmark that most people applying for PR status in Canada would want to achieve. It has to do with how many points, of course, that you can earn towards immigration. So by the end of today, I'm really hoping that we can see the skills we'll need to jump into that level 9 or even above if we can. Okay, so I'm quickly going to come back to my chat box as I do see a few questions about scoring. Okay, so Priya, I've already answered the question about vocab, so I'll skip over that. Sarah was wondering about, you don't have great ideas for questions. So you know what? The practice we do today is going to help you out with that, I think, as well. And Saida. So the reason why I'm going to draw you all into our lesson today is to help unblock your mind and give you ideas about some examples or that you can discuss in the writing. So hang tight and we'll come back to that for sure. Okay. We will look at 5 different actual responses today from 5 different test takers from past CELPIP tests. And I'll let you know right even before we begin that from those 5 responses, those people earned one of these 4 levels that you see the arrows pointing towards. So somewhere in these responses, we will see an example of a level 7, a level 9, 10, and there's even a level 12 in there as well. Okay, so again, we're choosing slightly different levels so that we can start to see the difference between them. By the end of today, I'm hoping you'll be able to look at a piece and say, well, it's got some great ideas there, but that's a bit of a, high beginner. That would be more level 7. Whereas you might look at a piece and say, wow, this is intermediate level. This is level 9 or 10. Or you might even say, this is quite advanced. So I think for yourselves, being able to recognize what a high scoring response looks like versus one that's still developing is a really important skill to have, because it will allow you to figure out which skills you need to work on for your own selves and develop to maximize your score too. Okay, so if you're making tons of grammar mistakes all the way through your writing and we have no idea what you're trying to communicate, then yes, that is definitely going to negatively affect your score. If you make a handful of small mistakes, like you made 1 verb tense error and you had 2 subject verb agreement errors, we could still figure out what you're trying to say. And if those are the only mistakes you've made, don't worry about it, right? So we can't look at scoring as a negative deduction for each mistake you make. That is not at all how the raters go about scoring your work. Yeah, major mistakes will have more of an effect on your score, but making a few mistakes here and there is really not the end of the world. Okay, I hope that helps to reassure you a little bit. Nobody's perfect, especially on a test. You got 27 minutes to to write out an email. So the raters are not expecting perfection. They're just looking for you to demonstrate strengths. That's all. So think of it in that lens as well. Okay, so here's a question that we're actually going to work with. I've got 3 different test taker responses to share with you. So can I give you about 30 seconds, please, to read the left side of your screen followed by the right side? So just get familiar with the question and then I'll lead us in discussion. Okay, so you have 27 minutes, and that includes the time it takes to read. So you've got a bit more time here, but I think the quicker you can get through the question, the more time you have for your own writing. So I'll trust that you've got the gist of it now. Just before we start talking, I'd like to open this up with a true or false, just for fun. So we have talked about this already, so I'm hoping you can answer now in the chat box. So the more words you write, the more likely you are to get a high score. Is that true or is that false, do you think? You're welcome to share that in the chat box now. You can write the full word or put a T or an F, really up to you. But yeah, we'll do these quickly just to review the key concepts we've already discussed. So the more words you write, the more likely you are to get a high score is false, right? We've already established. So there are so many ways to get your score, but you're more focused on demonstrating interesting vocab and great ideas and paragraph work and so on. So there. What about this one? This is a tougher question. So this one says, "Dear Sir or Madam" would be an appropriate greeting for this particular test question or this task. What do you think there? Would that be true or would that be false? And this is tricky. This, you have to have a little bit of an eye for detail, I'm going to say, in order to fully understand this part, I think. Yeah, and I can tell by my chat box, we're pretty evenly split. I'm seeing quite a few yeses and quite a few nos. So I'm going to tell you first off what the answer is. And the answer is false. You should not be using "Dear Sir" or "Madam" for this task. There are technically 2 reasons for that. And I'm going to start with sort of the general real life application. Languages actually change and adjust over time. And I think maybe in the past, I'm going back several decades even, "Dear Sir" or "Madam" might have been used more commonly. But in today's culture, in the year 2023, at least in Canadian writing, "Dear Sir" or "Madam" is considered quite outdated. You would not want to start any type of communication with this, particularly for a professional job application or in the workplace. It would be seen as, again, being a little out of date or old-fashioned. So please never use this greeting anyway, like for CELPIP or the real world, period. But if we wanted to look at this for the actual test question, there's another reason why you can't say "Dear Sir" or "Madam." And that's because you know the gender of this author, right? The whole point here is you're supposed to be writing to this famous author to invite that author to your class. Do you know if the author is a man or a woman? Can you please reread the instructions in blue and double check that fact? So I'll ask that to you now. Is this writer, is it a man or is it a woman? Yeah, look at the chat box. Yeah, some of you are on it right away, which is nice to see. So this is the type of detail I'm hoping you're going to be keeping your eyes open for on the test. So it says to write to the writer and invite her to speak to the children. So this one little word, this is a pronoun. Her means it's a female. So you couldn't say "Dear Sir" anyway, because it's not a man, and you know that for a fact. And the last thing we want to do is to offend our reader. If it's a woman reading this and she sees "Dear Sir," she's probably not going to feel very respected, and she might not want to come to the class, right? So we never want to upset our reader. So we would definitely want to make sure we're addressing them properly. That's all. Okay, and last but not least, we haven't talked about this, so let's just quickly handle this one now. The statement says you don't need to include to, from, or subject lines in CELPIP. Do you know much about the CELPIP test? Would you say this is true or is this false? As you're writing those 150 to 200 words, do you need to worry about the to, from subject? Do you know? What do you think? True, 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 false, false. Yeah, this is true. So don't worry about that. In the real world, that would already be there on your computer. But for CELPIP, we're going to start with the greeting. And we're going to come to that right now. Okay, so the greeting would be dear so-and-so. So you don't need to waste your time or your word count even on the to or the from or the subject line for CELPIP. So here's our question, and here's where you all come in with your wonderful imaginations. I'm hoping on a Friday evening when we're all tired, we're going to do our very best. This one says that you are an elementary school teacher. So you know that for a fact. You have to accept this situation in your test. You can't change it or make it up. So if you are an elementary school teacher, what does that mean to all of you watching right now? What grades would an elementary school teacher teach? Give or take. I know different parts of the world are slightly different, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is roughly how old are the children in the class that we're teaching. So when we say elementary school, we're talking about the younger age, right? So is there about a range anybody could suggest maybe? I'll go to my chat box here. Okay, some of you are saying 1 to 5. Some of you have it wrong, and I'm really glad we're talking about this. Elementary, no, you're all backwards. Elementary is young. So kindergarten is a thing in Canada. I don't know if that exists elsewhere. We can just say grade 1 if that makes it easier. So in grade 1, the kids are about 5 or 6 years old, roughly. So from grade 1 to about grade 6 would be sort of a really good way to imagine what an elementary school class would look like. Anything above that turns into middle school and high school. This is an elementary school. And the reason it's so important to imagine this now is because when you look on the right-hand side, look at all the things you have to do. You have to explain to the author why the kids like the book, explain what the author could do with the kids. And if you're trying to plan activities with a bunch of 8-year-old kids, those types of activities are going to be so different from imagining activities with, say, a bunch of grade 11 kids who are now 16 years old, right? So again, when you're coming into CELPIP, really be precise. Can I ask one of you, the first person to recommend it, I'll take that answer. I'd like one elementary grade to use it as an example for our writing today. Anywhere from grade 1 to 6 would be suitable. So Enitan, you were the first one today. Let's go with grade 5. Okay. So for the purposes of writing this question, we are going to pretend that we are an elementary school teacher teaching a grade 5 class. So that much we've decided. We have to address or write to a famous author. We want this famous author to visit our school, to visit our students. So when you're addressing your email, you would know the name of the person, wouldn't you? If you're inviting this famous writer, you know who that person is and you would know their name in order to address it. So you're going to say, dear, blah, blah, blah. Can I have the name of a female author that you really enjoy? Could be from any country or any language at all. It just has to be a woman because this question says invite her to come to the children. So let's see what you come up with. Daniela Hughes. Okay, Helen Keller is not like a famous author in today's day and age, but that's okay. So Jerry, your suggestion there works perfectly. You would need a last name, folks. You can't just throw in a first name. If this is a real author, you would know their name. The first one that comes to my mind is Margaret Atwood, because she's one of the more well-known Canadian authors, but there are so many other ones. J.K. Rowling always comes up every time I do this webinar because she's so well-known around the world, and that's a great example. Okay, good. So pick either a real person you know, or make a name up. Use your own name if you happen to be a woman, or use your mother's name. It really doesn't matter. But when you address this email, you have to have a female's name in mind. And you're going to assume that that person, the female's name, is the writer that you're inviting. Now, here's where it gets a bit tricky. And I'm going to test your knowledge right now on greetings. How do we formulate the greeting of an email? We don't know this famous author personally. So we have to make sure our language is formal. We cannot say, hi there, how are you today? Hi, Angela, how are you? You're not going to use first names at all because it's considered very rude in Canadian culture when you don't know someone at all, in this case, and you address them by first name. It's far too casual and inappropriate. So you're going to say, dear. You need a title word. For a man, it's super easy because there's only one choice. When you're writing to a man, it's dear Mr., right? Dear Mr. Brown or whoever it is. But when you're writing to a woman, you've got a couple of choices. You've got 3. I'm going to name them for you. I'd like you to tell me which is the right one for this situation. Would you say dear Miss, dear Mrs., or dear Ms.? There are 3 choices. So which one would you use for this particular question, do you think? Okay, I'm seeing all sorts of different answers. Okay, I'm going to type the right way to do it in the box, and then I'll explain why. Oop, I spelled it wrong. Okay, there we have it there. Can you see mine? Mine's going up quickly. Dear Ms. You can't say Miss and you can't say Mrs. here because, again, it's too casual and inappropriate. You don't know this person at all. All right. Sorry, which female author did we agree upon? I forgot to actually pick one. Somebody had mentioned Helen Keller. She's not a real author per se, but can we go with that one? It was suggested first, so let's do that. So if you're writing to a Helen Keller, which is a famous author, here's what it's going to look like. Just like that. Dear Ms. with a period and the last name only and a comma. Okay, we cannot put the first name. It's too casual. We don't know her well enough, so we're not going to assume we understand her relationship status. Why would you say Mrs.? When you call a woman Mrs., what are you implying about their relationship status? Does Mrs. mean that that woman is married or she's single? What does that mean? Yeah, it means that she's married. And we don't know Ms. Keller at all on a personal level. So it's actually considered inappropriate or even sometimes offensive to even refer to the marital status of somebody that you've just met. I know Canadians are super polite, aren't we? So we're not going to say Mrs. because that's far too presumptuous. And the word Miss, it's a better choice, but it's still using the same logic. Miss implies she's single. We're not supposed to talk about marital status. It's just considered one of those taboo subjects. We don't talk about religion, money, relationship status, politics, things like that when we first meet someone. At least we're not supposed to, to be extra polite. So we're certainly not going to do that here. So dear Ms. Keller is the way to go. If anybody who wants to practice this right now, do you want to throw in whoever your author's name is? Some of you were saying J.K. Rowling and so on. So take a moment if you want to double check it with me in the chat box. So dear Ms. last name, I want to double check that your capital letters are in place and that your punctuation is also correct. So I'll give you a few moments. You don't have to share if you don't want to. Perfect. Andrea, yes, that's awesome. Capital letters are perfect. Olo Wat Thomason, you're missing your comma at the end of that. So are you, Natarajan. Put your commas in, please. Jerry, fantastic. Anybody else? Oh, Lewis, you missed the capital letters. Fix them up, please. Oh, Cynthia is the first. Okay, now we're going too fast. Okay. Woo, sorry, I can't get to them all because we're going too fast. But again, just to repeat, have a look quick at, okay, everybody stop. Okay, I can't keep up. They're going too fast. But anyway, all words in your greeting has to have a capital letter. All of them do. Dear, Ms., and then the last name. So 3 capitals. Okay, the only punctuation marks you need are a period after the title, which is Ms., and then a comma after the last name. Perfect, Sam. You got it now. Joy has it now. Yeah. Oh, Menage, you're missing the comma. Put the comma in. Dear Ms. Menage. Yeah, memorize this. It's never going to change. Okay, and I'm being super picky with you because I just want you to get it right is all. I'm not trying to be too strict. Nitin, you're missing your comma. Aileen, you can't address the first name. Nope. iPad, you can't address the first name. All right, it has to be the last name. If you use the first name only, the tone is wrong. It's too impolite. Last one I'm going to correct. Yadula, you're missing your period after the word Ms. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say about greetings. You have some ideas, and it's up to you now to memorize those rules on your own. Let's carry on. Over here, we already said we were teaching a grade 5 class, and we're going to be writing to Ms. Keller to introduce her to our school. Can I have the name of the school, please? What elementary schools did you attend when you were in school yourselves? Or maybe you got children and they're in school right now. So again, it doesn't matter what the name is. It's just a super easy way to get an important or interesting detail. That's all. Perfect. Hanover Public School. Duncan Crant. Sure, if that's a school. Whatever. Springdale Public. Okay, so again, the school names are title words. Every single word in your school name will start with a capital letter, including the words public school, if that's the title. So one of I went to several schools as a kid. I guess I moved around a lot. One of mine was Laurentian Public School. So I'd have a capital L, capital P, capital S, and that's the correct way to format that. Okay, let's just pick one coming in. It can't be University Mohammed because we're teaching elementary school. It's grade 5. University Heights, that sounds to me like a university class, Sarah. I don't think that's elementary. Okay, Jerry, I'm going to take your idea. Can I borrow yours? St. Mary's Elementary School. Perfect. All your capital letters are in place. So let's go with that. So we are a grade 5 teacher emailing Ms. Keller, and we're trying to invite her to St. Mary's Elementary School. All right, so we've introduced her to our school name. What other details would Ms. Keller need to know before she can confirm whether she'll be joining us or not? Like, just imagine you're Ms. Keller and you're reading this invite saying, please come to St. Mary's Elementary School. What else would you want to know before you say, yes, I can come, or no, I can't? We're just trying to get a picture of what the school is all about. So yeah, the location is so important, right? So you can make that detail up. I live in the west end of Vancouver, so that's really easy for me. I'm just going to go with that. You know, if you want to give an intersection, we're located on the corner of Broadway and McDonald Streets, whatever it is. But the more precise and specific you can be, the better. So St. Mary's Elementary School, I'm just going to say in the west end of Vancouver, just for the heck of it. And it says, introduce them to our class. So we've already established that we're teaching grade 5. So we would be typing that in. What else would Ms. Keller need to know about our class before she says, yeah, I'd love to come visit, or no way, forget it? What does she need to know about our class in particular, beyond the grade level? What other detail would likely be so important to include here? Yes, Anitan, you've got it. Number of students, right? Can you imagine if you were a famous author and someone says, I've got 100 little grade 5 students, can you come talk to them? I'd say, no, thank you. Far too much noise and chaos, right? With that many kids. But if you could introduce like a typical or average class size, I think that would be more manageable, right? And more likely for Ms. Keller to agree to come. So can we have what's an average class in grade 5? Do you remember? Think back to when you were in grade 5, or just try to imagine it in real life here. Yeah, and again, you all have sort of your own ideas, but just try to be realistic to the best of your ability. And I'd say anywhere from 20 to 30 seems to be typical in Canada. Could be different elsewhere, I suppose. But yeah, if you're somewhere around 20, let's go with 25. We'll split the difference. Okay, 25 grade 5 kids at St. Mary's Elementary School in Vancouver's West End. So all those details we're including in the email. All right, so we've introduced Ms. Keller really well now to our school and our class. We also, somewhere along the way, have to explain why our students love Ms. Keller's books. Where do you start with this one? Can you make it easy on yourself and pick one particular book to discuss in this email? Don't make it general. Don't just say, oh, your books are so wonderful. Well, which book? Which book are you talking about? So let's have some titles here. Yeah, not even recent book. I want the name of a title. Think of a book you love, or make one up. Doesn't matter to me. But you'll score better if you actually have specific details. Yeah, I'm looking for the title of a book. I'm going to pull one off my bookshelf, and that's what we're going with. You can't see it. I have my background up. This one says, I Found You. So I'm going to go with that one. Oh, Harry Potter. We're getting some now. Jungle Book. We're getting some. Anybody else want to suggest? What is the name of a children's book? The Pilgrim's Progress. Okay, that's Chaucer, I think, Simon. But if you wanted to pretend it was a grade 5 book, sure. I mean, nobody's going to say you can't. Rapunzel, Peter Pan, sure, doesn't matter. Dora the Explorer, Patrick, was that yours? Yep, that's a good one, Patrick. Suresh, if you don't know the name of a book, make one up. Let's do that right now. If you can't think of the name of a single book in the entire world, can you just make one up for me? Patrick with his rabbit, sure. I don't know if that's real or not, but we could certainly imagine that being a grade 5 story, couldn't we? Wonderland, yeah, Alice in Wonderland, sure. Yeah, Suresh, do you have a favorite book that you wanted to share with us?
I don't know, like, I was thinking of Harry Potter.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do it. Like, obviously, Harry Potter wasn't written by Helen Keller, but that part doesn't matter. Like, nobody's fact checking your details. The important piece is you have those details included. Yeah, and The Secret, I've heard of that book. I know it's real. Dogs on the Road. Anyway, you've all got it now, so that's great. Pick one book. Can I just go, let's just go with Dogs on the Road is in here. It was a private one. That's kind of catchy. So let's assume we're reading to the students, Dogs on the Road, that Helen Keller has written. We have to explain to Ms. Keller why the children like Dogs on the Road. So I don't know this book. I don't even know if it's real. It could be just a made up title. So we have to come up with a very focused concept or element that the children absolutely love about this book. So think about, if you enjoy reading, think about some of the elements of story time that you really enjoy. Again, remember back to your youth. Sometimes just the characters really speak to you. Sometimes it might be more about the genre, like it's a fantasy or a comedy. It could be the beautiful illustrations in the books. So let's just pick one. I've named 3 examples, and I know there are more, but can we just focus our attention on one particular reason why the kids love these books? Okay, so Shazin is talking about images. Aileen, I like your discussion about morals and theme. Yeah, we could do that too, but let's go back to the images for a moment. So if we say to Ms. Keller that my students absolutely adore your book, Dogs on the Road, because the illustrations in this book are so colorful. It allows them to imagine the scene more vividly. Okay, so you're taking that idea and you're fully explaining it, trying to throw in some interesting vocab as well. You might have time to give a second example if you've got the word count and the time. So again, Aileen was talking about the morals and the values. You know, you might say, as Dogs on the Road talks about how sometimes friends fight, but then they can make up and continue to maintain their friendship. You know, that's really applicable to my grade 5 class as they're trying to develop their own sense of autonomy, and relationship building is important at that age. So whatever you can do to explain what you mean and give examples, I think is the main idea here. Okay, and there are other examples, but we'll move on. We have to invite Ms. Keller to the classroom. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this particular question. So my question to you now is, what does an appropriate invite sound like? Are you going to give Ms. Keller, you know, one day that you'd like her to come to the class, or are you going to give her a nice range of dates? Are you going to give her a whole month to figure out when she's free? Like, what would be easiest for her and also for you? So just sort of imagine you're the author. What would work best for you? Maybe that's a good way to think of it. Okay, so looking here. Okay, so we've got some suggestions coming in. I think if you can give whoever you want to visit, Ms. Keller in this case, if you can give her a flexible time frame, but you don't want it too open-ended. If you say, come in sometime over the next month, that's still very loosey-goosey. It's really up in the air, and we don't have any sense of when that visit might happen. Whereas if you say to her, you know, would you be free sometime in the next 2 weeks? I think that's like a really nice start to finish time, because she's probably busy, right? She's a famous author, so we can't expect her to be available tomorrow when we want her there. So giving her a little bit of a wiggle room, we call that flexible time. It shows respect for her time, but it also organizes the situation, right? So if you were to say, you know, do you have time to visit sometime in the next 2 weeks? Can we be even more specific? Because she would have no idea what the time of your classes are. So are you looking for her to come in mornings or afternoons? Are you looking for her to come in, you know, between 9 and 11 or 1 to 3? What does that look like to you, do you think? Erico, lunchtime is a tough sell. If you were in grade 5, would you want to give up your lunch to go do some more language activities? Probably not, eh? So try to be just think about what the kids would want and maybe what she would want as well. Yeah. So if you can, again, give a bit of an open-ended time. So I like this notion of between 9 to 11. I think that would work well. If you're saying afternoon, sure, but then just give her a time. 3 p.m. is too strict. Like, come at 3. What if she's not free at 3? You're not giving any backup plan. So could you just be a little more open and say between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, would you be free in the next 2 weeks? Something like that. So yeah. Oh, interesting. Cesar is saying, suggest the time and date. That's definitely polite and respectful. My concern is, what if she's not free for, 2 months and you're doing your story time unit now? So you just have to consider that, I suppose. But I do like the way you're definitely being polite and considerate. But yeah, pick your time. Over the next 2 weeks, mornings work best for us, as that's when we're doing story time. So if you are free anywhere between 9 and 11, that would certainly be helpful for us. Something like that would work as well. But again, just use common sense and logic, but try to be respectful of the author's time and of your own time, I think is the best way to look at this realistically. Last but not least, we have to sort of recommend to Ms. Keller what it is we'd like her to do with our children. So if we already explained to her that our kids loved the book, Dogs on the Road, they loved the colorful illustrations because it allowed their imaginations to fully wonder where the characters were going next. If we've already talked about that, can you use that example and now bridge it into a possible activity? Think of all the wonderful things you could do with a group of grade 5 kids who love the colorful illustrations of a book. What's the first possible activity that comes to your mind? Okay. So share, yeah, we could ask Ms. Keller to read from the book. I think that would be helpful as a start, but then what? I mean, you've already said that the kids love these colorful illustrations. Can you connect the dots and then suggest a really fun activity that the kids would do? Yes, Nadia, please look at Nadia's. Yes, Anitan, awesome. Do you see how that would be fascinating? So for sure, I think it would be great to have Ms. Keller read a part of this book first, definitely. And then after that book's been read aloud, could we not have the kids illustrate the scene? That would be like just the perfect way all of these elements come together, you know, in an imaginative way. I think that would be great. So that's one way to go. And there's so many other things you could do. I mean, you could have the kids write their own conclusion to the story, maybe write the next chapter, you know, maybe introduce a new character to the scene. It's limitless. Use your imagination. But again, if we've chosen grade 5, we need to pick activities that would be appropriate for that. And I think what you've recommended so far sounds pretty good for me. The last thing we need to do is what? If we're going with that notion of making an art lesson and having the kids illustrate a scene after Ms. Keller's read it, and I love that idea, how long would that take, do you think? Give or take. What would be reasonable? You know, it's not a 5-hour activity, so what do you think for that? The reading of the story and then the drawing of the scene would probably take, yeah, a good hour, somewhere in there. And then think about in grade 5, you'd be about 9 years old or so, maybe about 10. So yeah, 1 hour is not unreasonable to expect a 10-year-old child to focus their attention. If this was a grade 1 class, it might be a bit long, right? So this is what I mean. So for those of you earlier saying, I have no idea what to write about, I'm really hoping that our long and detailed discussion here has just opened up different pathways of thinking. It's always about, yeah, making up the details as you go, but just think about it from a common sense angle. What does the author need to know before she comes? You know, what can I do to help her visit be more comfortable? What information can I share with her? I need to be precise and specific in order to make it easy for her, and so on. Yeah. Anyway, there's no one way to do this. There are so many different ideas you could include. So I'd like to now look at some different examples that actually answer this question. So this is sample response number 1, writing back to the author to invite them to the classroom. So at the bottom of the email, you'll see this test taker's name. I think it's a made-up name, but his name is Lucas McTeacher. So that's the CELPIP test writer, we'll say. Can you take about 20 seconds to skim read over his response from the top, please? And then I'll ask you some questions about his work. So let's see how Lucas did. Okay. I see some things here that I think Lucas has done pretty well. And then I also see some things that I'd like to work with Lucas a bit more to elevate the score. I'm going to tell you the score at the end. So I think what I'd like to do first is just sort of lead discussion with you, because remember, a score never comes from one idea. It's not just about vocab. It's not just about details. It's a combination of everything together. So I'm going to sort of really focus our discussion right now on looking at that checklist and identifying strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to do it backwards. I'm going to start with the task fulfillment section, which is that bottom part of the rater's checklist. And what I quickly want to do is just simply double check that Lucas has actually addressed each of those 4 bulleted points. So remember our big brainstorming session? We had to introduce the the writer. In this case, it should be Ms. Smith at the top. So we had to introduce Ms. Smith to our school and our class. So in the very first paragraph, I noted this detail. Okay, I won't comment yet on how well it's been established, but at least we can check that item off the list and say, well, Lucas has addressed, we see here it's an elementary school in the West End. So that's an attempt to introduce Ms. Smith to the class. The second point is why the kids liked the book. We do see a couple of details there. The third point was we have to invite Ms. Smith to the classroom. And there we have it, nice and direct, actually. I'd like to invite you as a guest speaker. So that part's been done very well. And then what the author can do with the children is more or less there. So from a task fulfillment point of view, those 4 bulleted points have at least been addressed. And this is a strength, okay? They've not been addressed entirely well. There's a lot of detail missing, but that's about content. We'll talk about content next. Right now, it's just about task fulfillment. And we can say, yes, those 4 bulleted points at least have been addressed. The other elements of task fulfillment include word count. Great, between 150 to 200 words. There he goes, he met those requirements. And the tone is the other part. Okay, now the greeting at the top should be Ms. Smith, a woman, not Mr. Smith. That's just one little mistake, but at least the title itself is formal and it's appropriate. So I wouldn't be too hard on him for that mistake. There is a slight problem with tone though, and it's right here. The sign-off is not appropriate, not for Canadian culture anyway. We should not be saying faithfully yours. When you say faithful, I guess in Canadian custom, it sort of strikes a chord to relate to religion. And again, religion is one of those topics that Canadians are taught just not to even talk about with people they don't know. It's not considered appropriate. So please don't ever use this greeting at all when you're communicating. It's not appropriate in, as I say, Canadian business writing. What would be probably the most common sign-off that you could use? Does anyone know how to format it correctly? Here we go again. You have to have your capital letters right. You have to have your punctuation right as well. And I'm seeing various attempts at this. Okay, good. Most of you have it. Most of you have it. Okay, here are 2 that I want you to memorize because you can never, ever go wrong with them. So you're either probably going to use sincerely, or you can use regards. Okay, did you notice how both of those words that I wrote in there start with a capital letter, and then after those words, I put a comma? That's 100% the way the structure is supposed to look. Okay, now, if you know that's step 1, once you've memorized those and you know how to use those, you're more than welcome to start getting a little fancy. Some people like to say best regards, and that's perfectly acceptable, but have a look how that one's formatted. Do you notice now that I've only got the capital letter on the first word for best, so the capital B, but that second word regards does not have a capital anymore, but I still have the comma. So if you're going to get fancy and include 2 words in your sign-off, you need to memorize the grammar rules. Otherwise, it's a small error. It's not going to affect your score really on CELPIP, but again, we want to be as accurate as we can. Sincerely or regards, Raja, means the same thing. There's not one that's better. It's just a matter of personal preference. Okay, a third one you might use, this is the one I use, quite frankly. Pretty much every email I write in a professional context, I just write the word best. I put a little comma and sign my name. So that's one too that's become a little more common in recent times. But sincerely and regards are probably the best way to go. Erico has a great question. Can the rest of you help us answer it, please, in the chat box? Erico wants to know if we can use cheers for this situation. Could we use cheers, do you think? Yes or no? For this particular situation? No, absolutely not. Okay, great. Why not though? This is the more important of the 2. Why is it wrong to use cheers when you're writing to a famous author? Yeah, it's way too informal. The only reason you're going to use cheers is if you know that person quite well. So it's probably a good friend of yours. Maybe a team colleague that you work with and you like every day and you know them very well. Yeah, on CELPIP, it's probably going to be formal. I can't think of a single question that I've ever read from a practice test even that says, write to your friend. It's almost always some sort of a stranger or a manager. So again, you can never go wrong with the 2 sign-offs, sincerely or regards. So please memorize the spelling remember there's a capital letter to start and a comma at the end. And use those interchangeably, and you can never go wrong with those. Okay, good. Let's go back to the content. Let's talk about the content details and how well perhaps Lucas has done this now. So at the very first detail up top that's underlined talks about the school. So he's saying elementary school in the West End. What's missing here? So yeah, we have addressed the task, but we're definitely missing some specific details. So what could Lucas add in to make this even better? Yeah, we want to know the name of the school and the location. Like the city would be helpful because all we see is the West End, like West End of London, Vancouver, we don't know. But the name of the school and the location would definitely be helpful there. Yeah, for sure. We don't even have the name of the book, do we? We see some details about why the kids liked the book, but we don't even see the title of a book. So that detail could and should be added in. When we talk about, we don't talk about the students at all, do we? Oh, all we see here is that he's an elementary school teacher. Yeah, no, he just says, my children love your book and so on. We don't know what grade, we don't know how many students or how old they are. So those are definitely details that we should add in. And what else? I'd like to invite you. Okay, he does give a couple of activities. Like he wants, I guess, Ms. Smith to talk about how she develops characters. I think that's a great idea. But his invite just says, I'd like to invite you as a guest speaker. Oh, sorry, right below that, I almost missed it. Good thing I read it back to myself just now, right here. They have classes on Mondays and Fridays between 9 to 11. So I actually quite like that detail. I think that's probably the strongest of the four is the invite itself. Like he gives a pretty precise time, but it's still a bit open-ended and flexible. So I think that's quite suitable. Okay, so yeah, definitely need to develop the content. It's lacking. It's definitely not, upper level, I would say, as a result of all of that. Yeah, okay. Can we do a quick look for the vocab? Can you find out any words here at all that sort of jump off the screen at you as noteworthy or interesting or descriptive? Something you'd like to congratulate Lucas for using because it's just demonstrates pretty strong writing. Anything at all? I see a couple of words here that I think are definitely interesting and very suitable for what he's talking about. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like literature, some of you are talking about. I like the word thoughtful by itself. I question the way he uses it though, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I think if you ask me to pick 3 or 4 parts of his response, if I'm just looking for vocab, the words here that are underlined probably demonstrate his best vocabulary. Again, these words seem to be a lot more precise than others is all. Yeah, so those ones are pretty good. The only word, again, thoughtful on its own, I think is interesting. But what Lucas is saying here is that the students really liked whatever novel this is because they found the novel simple to understand and thoughtful at the same time. And I'm not really clear what he means. Thoughtful could mean it really made the students think about life lessons. Like that could be very profound or deep. Or in thoughtful in this case, does it just mean that the sentiment or the meaning was really valuable for the students? Like that one word choice by itself needs a bit more development. Maybe he could have said they found the novel thoughtful because it really reminded them about the values of friendship. Like that would be explained and very precise. But by itself, it's a little bit unclear. So when you're choosing vocab, feel free to fully explain the idea. And again, you'll score better. All right, so a couple of adjustments I would make. Can we look at now his words on the screen? So the readability, it's relatively easy to read, I'd say, because of the structure. He does have sentences there. So he does have his capitals and his end punctuation and so on. He does have paragraphs too. So this is how we're supposed to structure an email. You've got the greeting, you leave a blank space. And then for each paragraph we have 1, 2, 3 little paragraphs, and then we are leaving that little blank space between them. So that's helpful. But if you looked more with a fine-tooth comb, you'd see that his paragraphs need a little bit of revision as well. So one paragraph is supposed to talk about one main idea. And as soon as you have a different main idea, that's when we start the new paragraph. So up here in paragraph 1, I noticed that Lucas was first introducing the school, and then he gets right into the novel and why the students liked it. I think what Lucas should have done is given more details about the school, and that would be that first paragraph. The next paragraph could be all about the book and why the students liked it. And then the third paragraph could be about what we would want the teacher to do with the students and so on. So just a little bit of tweaking with the organization. But overall, you know, readability is actually pretty good. Once we make those paragraph revisions, I think it would be even better. I noticed a handful of little grammar mistakes, but nothing too crazy. Like this one circled expression here is confusing. You know, he says, I think this meeting will be useful for those who is interesting for everyone. So we're not quite clear on what that particular meaning is supposed to mean, but everything else there is very clear. So as I said before, we're not looking for perfection. You know, having one awkwardly worded sentence is not going to take you down a whole level on your CELPIP score. If you were to make this mistake 8 times all the way through your writing, well, then yes, that would be a huge problem. But making one mistake like this is not really the end of the world. So that's the kind of thinking I wanted you to have for sure. All right. I would like you to guess actually the score that Lucas achieved. Do you think? So remember, I mentioned earlier that all of our responses today fall into one of these 4 categories. So just based on our discussion, and if you even looked at the CELPIP descriptor words, like 12 is advanced, 10 is highly effective, 9 is effective, and 7 is adequate. Where do you think Lucas landed when he submitted this one for scoring? And I'm looking at my chat box, and you're all ballpark. I mean, a lot of you are torn between 7 and 9, and yes, it's one of those two. So I'll give you this person's score. Lucas, for this response, got a level 7. And when you complete your CELPIP test, apart from just the score report that you receive, you're going to be given a performance profile. So this is a little write-up that summarizes what you should be able to demonstrate in writing at that level. So it says here in level 7, the writer can write short factual text in some social and more formal contexts. They have good control of simple grammar and an adequate control of some complex grammar. And they use common words and can occasionally use more precise or formal vocab. I think that summarizes Lucas's work actually quite well. So that's sort of our starting point for today. That's what a level 7 would be, sort of a high beginner, I would say, is achieving. So he definitely has a lot of promise. And as he continues to build forward a lot of the details too, and making longer, more complex sentences, it's going to help him out a lot. Alrighty, here's your second response on the same question. And the name of this CELPIP test writer is at the bottom. Again, I think it's a made-up name. It says Mrs. Appleby. So if you could read Mrs. Appleby's email, please. And she also chose the author's name to be Ms. Smith. So let's see what she did. And again, I'll guide discussion as we go. Okay. So right off the top, before I even say a word, I'm hoping in your mind right now, you're asking yourself, is Mrs. Appleby's writing level higher than Lucas's? Like that would be a really nice starting point. Lucas got a level 7, and we know what he did well and where he needed to improve upon. So yeah, I would definitely say even that first paragraph right away, I said, wow, Mrs. Appleby has some serious writing skills. So this, I would say right off the top, is advanced. I won't yet tell you if it's level 11 or 12. It's one of those, but let's get into it, and we'll see what she's done quite well. So again, just for task fulfillment, remember those 4 bulleted points. Let's do a quick once over and just make sure we've at least completely addressed the writing tasks. So the very first thing was to introduce the author, Ms. Smith, to the school. Okay, so that's been done quite well. Why the kids liked the book is here. We do get an invite to the classroom. Yeah, right there. And then also a request for what Ms. Smith could do with the students. So both of our test takers, Lucas and Mrs. Appleby, did address completely the 4 tasks. So that's excellent. Nobody's forgotten anything. So I'm pleased to see that. Okay, now a few points here could be a little bit more discussed. I think a lot of them have been done well, but there's a few things missing. So maybe if we just sort of started off at the top again, where we're introducing Ms. Smith to the school, we have the name of a school, St. Mary's Elementary School. We have a location, it's on Main Street, right? And then we also have the introduction to the class. It's a 3rd grade teacher. So those details were missing from Lucas's response, but Mrs. Appleby has them all here. Do we know how many 3rd grade students Mrs. Appleby has? Do a really quick scan. Do we know how many students Mrs. Appleby has in the class? We do. And that comes down here, 25 children. She's lumped that in with the activity. So I think that's okay for organization. So yeah, that first element has been done with a lot of detail, and I'm pleased to see that. All right. The second point is talking about how, or what book, I guess, the kids like so much, and that's all in here as well. We get a lot of really, really fun details there too, right? So we get the name of the book, Edward in the Garden. We even get the a little scene that's been discussed, which I love. So she says the children, meaning her own students, were delirious with laughter when Edward fought the rabbit off his carrots. So she's complete. I don't know if this is a real book or not. I've never heard of it. But either way, you know, including the title and then making up characters' names and describing some of the action. So you can see how this book is so funny for the kids. And she doesn't just say it's funny. She says the kids were delirious with laughter and they were chuckling on the floor. So you can see how high level the vocab is as well. Yeah. Anyway, the invite down here. Yep. The principal and I would like to invite you. We would like you to do a 20-minute talk with our 25 students and a Q&A at the end. So this is all fine and well, but there's a detail that's missing. Anybody catch it? It would require a 20-minute talk about what? What do you want me to talk to your kids about, right? Like if you were the author, would you not say, sure, I can do a 20-minute talk, but what do you want me to talk about, right? Yeah. So that needs to be added in, whether it's, you know, to explain to our students how they can draft the chapter of the book or develop a character and develop the story arc or whatever it is. You need to give the precise focus of the talk, right? Okay. And the other thing too, some of you might have noticed is like the invite's okay in the coming weeks. I think that's a good start, but she's missing that precise time that we talked about earlier. In the coming weeks, maybe in the next 2 weeks, you know, preferably in the morning time, 9 to 11 or 9 till noon, would you be free? This is a little bit too open-ended, I think, for the author, and we could use a bit more precision. But anyway, most of the details have been handled quite well. Sign-off's great. Sincerely. Word count is near perfect. So remember, Lucas wrote 156 words, and he had some okay details, but he had a lot of things that were missing. Here comes Mrs. Appleby with almost perfectly 200 words, and she has most of the details there. She's forgotten the topic of the talk, and maybe like could be more precise about the time frame, but everything else is there. So this is, again, I keep saying, try to get close to 200 words, because that's what really allows you to add these extra details in that will support a stronger score. Anyway, so again, I'll go back to the specific details. We've talked about most of them. But what do you make of this? Isn't this creative, right? Isn't it interesting? So after Mrs. Appleby introduces Ms. Smith to the school, she just adds the sentence for sheer interest's sake. It's not necessary to put this in. We've already answered the question. But Mrs. Appleby says, oh, you know, perhaps you've noticed our bright pink mural in the neighborhood. It gets quite the attention from people passing by. So she's really trying to introduce the school to Ms. Smith in a very imaginative way. So adding details like this demonstrate personal writing style. And this is a hallmark element of an advanced level writer. People that know how to write well and then go above and beyond what's expected to add in these extra little touches that are literally there just for our enjoyment. So this is how we know she's an advanced writer. One of the reasons we know anyway, that she is an advanced writer too. Okay, and again, I already mentioned that she gets the book title, a little scene, the number of kids are there, everything's believable and everything is very appropriate as well. Okay, all right, vocab, real quick. just for time's sake. I know you could find your own, but I thought I'd underline a few that I thought were quite precise and interesting. You know, even when she talks about her grade 3 students, she flips it around in the second paragraph. She goes, my third graders. I thought that was a nice touch as well. And it would be an honor to host you. So she does have lots of really great vocabulary. There is one tiny, tiny writing mistake. And it's right there. It's a word choice error. And I think it's what I would call a careless mistake. I think Mrs. Appleby probably was in a rush and just didn't read back her work or catch this. But right now it says your presence would motive and guide the students greatly. So what should that word say instead of motive? That's not at all the right word. It's an actual English word, yes, but it's not the right word for this one. And it should be motivate, as you've all written there. Your presence would motivate the students greatly. So again, making one tiny little mistake like that is not going to lower the score, as it's just one mistake, and we knew what she meant. But I thought I'd point that out. And the only other thing that the raters commented on, they were very impressed with most of the work, but the raters did say, even though the ideas are strong, some of the sentence structure is a bit simple. So if you look just here where I'm pointing with the laser pointer, it says here, your presence would motivate and guide the students greatly. So this is actually a simple sentence structure. And then this last sentence here, it looks long, but we've been relying on the very simple conjunction and to connect them together. So when you're doing your own writing, not just for CELPIP, but every chance you get, try your very best to find maybe higher level or different ways of connecting these ideas. I think it will go a long way to supporting the writing score. But what score do you think she got? I guess I kind of gave it away because we know this is an advanced piece. So if it's an advanced piece of writing, there's really only one choice to be made here. So this, my friends, is as good as it gets. This is a level 12. So do you see what I mean by nobody's looking for you for perfection? There were mistakes in that answer and we talked about them. We acknowledged them, but there were so many other strengths across all 4 categories that they far outweighed the few weaknesses that we did find. And that's exactly what the raters do when they approach your work. It's a balancing act. Okay, so do your best to demonstrate strengths everywhere. And that's how you'll maximize your score. So a level 12 writer it's all about complexity and also about the grammar is higher level. The vocab will be higher level. Look at that last part where it says that we can use common words to adjust the tone and style of my writing to suit the task. So that detail about that pink mural, that was a perfect example of using personal style and flair to suit the task of this test question. So well done. Mrs. Appleby, aces, right? Level 12 is as good as it gets. Okay, can you read this third and final response to the email question? This one at the bottom, I see the name Jennifer Clark. So that might be the CELPIP test taker's name. Anyway, read it through and we'll talk about this one as well. Sarav, I wouldn't worry about being too fancy in your opening, especially for CELPIP, because you've got 27 minutes and only about 200 words. So I would get right to your bulleted test points, finish your writing, and if you've got a few minutes left on the clock and you want to go back and add a couple of extra details, like what Mrs. Appleby did, then that might be the better approach. Save the fancy stuff for after when the email's already finished, because the main elements are the most important. So you want to prioritize your time there. Yeah, good question. And I understand what you're asking, but I hope my answer made sense. Some of you are guessing the score already. I won't tell you the score till the end. Okay, so you've seen a level 7 and a level 12. So now you at least have something to work with. So maybe start trying to kind of slot this one in. You know, is it as good as the 12? Or is it like more like the 7? Or is it somewhere in between? So sometimes that's a nice approach too to understand scoring. Anyway, as this is our very last example for the email question, you'll notice I've got in gold on the right-hand side, I've got the actual question from the raters checklist that they're using to ask themselves as they read your work. So really quickly, I want to make sure that Jennifer Clark's ideas are well organized and developed. So the question at the bottom of the screen says, is the writer's purpose clear? So do you think it's clear that Jennifer Clark is inviting the author, Ms. Miller, to the classroom? Has that part been done? Like, that's the whole point of writing this email, is to invite the famous author to come to the class. So is the writer's purpose clear at the very least? This is our starting point here. And I'd say, yeah, it's definitely clear. What I like about this too is that she actually uses different vocabulary to get that idea across. So you usually put your purpose for writing in the first paragraph. Not always, but 99% of the time. It makes the reader's job really easy. Understand what it is you want right away, and then you can come back to that later, which is exactly what Jennifer did. So first and foremost, she says, the students would absolutely love it if you could spare the time to visit. That is an invite. That is saying to Ms. Miller, we'd like you to come to our class, please. And it's very polite as well. And in the final paragraph, she sort of emphasizes that, you know, it'd be simply amazing if you could come and inspire the students. Same thing. She's coming back to that invite and making it clear that she wants Ms. Miller to drop by. So I think that's great. Okay, now the main ideas, those 4 bulleted points, we have to say, did she support each of those points with detail? And I think, again, just for time's sake here, so we're not all day, I'll go ahead and I'll underline some of these details. So in her first paragraph, she does a pretty decent job of introducing the Ms. Miller to the school. You know, it's Killarney Elementary. They're near the recreational center close to Rupert Street and so on. So all that's just fine. Okay, we do get the name of a book, I think, or a story perhaps in the second paragraph. I'm assuming it's called Unicorn Land, and she even gives us some of the characters. Maybe she's making them up even. We understand that there's a character named Misty, and then there's the shy and lonely dragon Harold and so on. So yeah, there are definitely some examples there of details for sure. What else I noticed, maybe you did too, is that Unicorn Land is mentioned again in the third paragraph. This is great. When you introduce a main idea and then you further extend it in a different paragraph, it's connecting the ideas. So this is what we mean by, did you organize yourself? I'd say, yeah, she did very well. Established her purpose, went through the tasks, and then sort of reinforced them as she went. And there is an attempt to develop some of these ideas for sure. Okay, what about the vocab? Can you find just a couple of words that jump out? I'll show you a nice color-coded screen later, but does she use a good range of words and phrases? Feel free to point out a few of them. Anything there that really, jumps out at you? I always say, are they noteworthy? Are they words that you'd like to say, wow, I'm going to try to use that word myself someday. I think it's really interesting. And I'd say, sure. I think there are some great examples here. And they're not even just individual words, they're expressions. Hang on to every word and sense of wonder and amazement and so on. So she definitely has some decent words, and some of you are finding the same words there too. But what we see from Jennifer Clark, unfortunately, is a little bit of repetitive language use too. So this is actually a weakness when we're talking about vocab. So just to make it easy, I color-coded the screen. So in blue represents natural language that's suitable for the task. And as you can see, there are many examples here of blue words that have been pointed out as strengths. It's the orange words from a vocabulary standpoint that create a slight weakness. Can you please look closely at the orange words on screen and try to figure out what the main weakness is? Do you notice a word there that's been repeated over and over and over again? So just look at the orange words, and I think you'll notice it almost right away. Holy moly, 6 times I just counted. Yeah, the word create in one form or another. It's either creativity, create, creates, creation. Those words all come from the same word family, so we'll count them as the same word. So there are 6 examples of that very same word, and that's far too many times. So it might be okay to use the word create or creativity a couple of times, but change it up after that. So find a way to use a synonym or a paraphrased idea. That would definitely support the vocab. But okay, so repetition is a weakness, but again, look at the color balance on my screen here. There are many more examples of precisely or suitably used vocabulary than there are of the repetition. So even though we've identified repetition as a weakness, it's not going to completely destroy the rest of the response. It's not going to drop you a whole level or two, because again, you're outweighing the weakness by demonstrating other strong examples of vocabulary. So that's really important to remember. You're not losing marks just like that. You're balancing out the strengths and the weaknesses. Okay, now let's go on to the readability. So how easy is it to read and understand this response? And one of the elements that makes it easy is to go through it and have it pretty fluent or smooth. I noticed a handful of grammar mistakes here. I will acknowledge that, and I'll even underline them for you. But even though we've got 3 little grammar mistakes, they don't destroy our ability to understand what Jennifer's talking about. You know, that first one up top, maybe you can quickly help me correct it. I think it's an easy one to correct. She says, my students are a huge fan. So she's mixing and matching her singulars and plurals, right? So how might you fix this if this was your piece of writing? So let's imagine you're typing away and you've got 2 minutes left on your clock on the test, and you're reading it back to fix the mistakes. And you catch this, you go, oh, delete, delete, type, type, type. What would it look like? My students are perfect, huge fans. Yeah. So we need to make everything there plural just so it agrees, right? Below that, the second example says, it would simply be amazing if you can come. This is such a common mistake. We know what she means, at least, but can you help me fix it? This is a verb tense issue. It would simply be amazing if you could come. Do you see how we've mixed and matched the present and the past? So would goes with could, not can, if that makes sense. That last one there is just sort of a wordy awkwardness. I don't know how else to describe it. It says inspire them, like the students, on how to create. It would just be more natural if we said inspire the students inspire the students to create. I think if we just took out these 2 words, it would be just a little bit smoother. But again, they're tiny, tiny little mistakes. They don't really affect our ability to understand. And likewise, there are even 3 tiny little punctuation mistakes or spelling mistakes. You know, you can see them circled there. But again, they're minor. They don't happen often, so they're not going to destroy an otherwise decently organized response. Her paragraph skills are pretty stellar, I would have to say. She's got every single paragraph starting on the left margin. She's got spaces between them, like she's blocked the paragraphs appropriately, and they're done correctly and so on. So I think all that's great as well. All right, so if we had to sum this one up in a nutshell, and then I'll ask you to guess the score, I would say, looking back and thinking of what we've just discussed, I would say that she describes the school extremely well. We'll give that a green light. We've got the name of the school and where it's situated. She doesn't introduce the students, though, to the class. Did you notice that? Do we even know what grade she's teaching? No, we don't. All we know is it's an elementary school. So that's a problem. So we need to know how many students, we need to know what grade. So those details are missing. We do understand why the children like the books. I love that part of her writing, you know, Harold and Misty and this lonely dragon, and they hang on to the words, and oh, it's wonderful, wonderfully written. The invite to the classroom. Can you again have a little look? It might be small now, admittedly, but you see here, she made the same mistake that Mrs. Appleby did. She just said, in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be having these writing sessions. You know, thank you for your time and let me know if you can come. Well, in the next 2 weeks is a little bit vague still. So in the next 2 weeks, a good starting point, but we can go even further. You know, in the next 2 weeks, would you be free to come in, preferably on a Monday or Wednesday morning between 9 and 11? Something like that would be just so much more precise. And last but not least, what the writer can do with the kids hasn't been very well established, because all she does is talk in circles. She keeps saying to the author, it'd be great if you could tell us how to create a fantasy world. That's an awesome idea. But then she repeats the idea. She says, tell them how you wrote Unicorn Land. Well, Unicorn Land is a fantasy world. And then, oh, what contributed to your creation? How did you put together these adventures? So all 4 of these ideas say pretty much the same thing. So we would want a little bit more variety in the details there about the activities. But again, look at the report card, if you will. You know, we've missed one detail altogether, which is about the class, but we've at least addressed the other points. 2 of them were done very well and very fully, but the other 2 were addressed. They just had room for development is what we're trying to say. You know, and last but not least, I'd say the tone is appropriate. She formatted the greeting and the sign off wrong, and we've been working hard on this. So you can tell me what's wrong with the greeting. How would you fix this? Dear Christine Miller is not appropriate for this task. What should it look like? Dear Ms. Miller, you have it. Ms. Miller, because we don't know this person well enough to be addressing them by first name. And likewise at the bottom, see where she wrote kind regards? Close, but not quite perfect yet. Can somebody make an attempt maybe in the chat box? Thank you, Jerry. Perfect. Kind regards, no capital R on the regards. Yeah, and Oksana, put your comma after the word regards. That's all. You got it. Yeah, and Kenneth. Okay, good. You all have it now. Nice. We know how to do that, and we'll get that right on our own CELPIP test. Let's guess the score here. Is this a level 7, 9, 10, or 12? And I took a peek at the chat box earlier. A lot of you are kind of ranging it in the middle, and rightfully so. This is an intermediate level response. It's not quite advanced. But this is a level 9. So again, if you're looking for PR status, or applying, I should say, for PR status, this would be sort of your benchmark from which to draw from. So it's not perfect. You can see where the areas of weakness are, and we want to continue working through, but it definitely is showing now more consistent complexity. So she does have some vocabulary that's emerging that is showing higher level skills and so on. There will be some mistakes, but the mistakes we looked at, they don't affect the meaning. And that's key for level 9. So good job there. Okay, so for your email, you can always get away with structuring an email this way. So your greeting comes first, as we know. We've talked about formality, so I'll say no more about that. Your purpose statement, in this case, like inviting the author to the classroom, that should probably go in the first paragraph somewhere. Those middle paragraphs, we call them body paragraphs, is where you get into your details. So descriptions about the book the students loved and why they liked it. And then discussions about what types of activities the author would do with the kids. All of those are those specific details that go in the middle paragraphs. Each different idea should go in a different paragraph. And then a conclusion would be fine. Sometimes it's just a matter of, I hope you can visit us soon. The students would be very excited. Something like that would just remind the author that we're hoping she'll come and leave a positive impression, I guess, at the end. And we've talked about sign-offs now, so I think we're in good hands there. Okay. Yeah, Mary, if you're addressing a restaurant manager, why not say, dear restaurant manager? That would be a good one to do. If you don't know the name of the person, use their job title. Yeah, in this case, we do know the name of the person because we're writing to a famous author. All right, and we know that the signature goes at the bottom. Say no more. Okay, let's zip in. I've only got 2 sample responses for task 2. So we should be able to finish this in the next 20 minutes and then we'll log off. You have a new question though for task 2. So can I ask you to take about 20 seconds to read it through? So obviously start on the left and figure out who you are, and then look at your 2 options on the right, and we'll go from there. Okay, I think we're clear on what's happening here. So this is all about vacation time, right? So what we have to figure out is which way we want to go. So we have to write to our boss in either situation, but you need to determine option A or B. Like, are you wanting to keep your vacation time and tell your boss, no, we're not going to the hotel training? Or is it the opposite? Are you willing to sacrifice 2 days of your vacation so that you will go to the beachside training? So that's what you're trying to figure out. So let's maybe start with a very quick true or false, just like we did last time. Okay. True or false? Question 1. You can include made up details, like from your imagination, about the hotel and the training. Think about everything we've talked about today and tell me if this is true or false. And I'm hoping that everybody gets this right, because this is sort of the main part of our session today. And I'm very happy to see everybody saying yes. That's what we spent so much time doing earlier about the school and the writer and the book and so on. So whatever your question is, this one's about training at a hotel. So that's your focus now. So you probably name the hotel, make one up. I don't know. I'm taking a vacation in 2 weeks to Victoria on Vancouver Island. I'm running the half marathon there, and I'm staying, I won't tell you the hotel I'm staying at. I'll tell you the name of the hotel I do know there. Like the Bedford Inn is one. So whatever comes to your mind, maybe there's an actual hotel that you know, use it. If not, make one up, doesn't matter. Beachside resort. That's just off the top of my head. So maybe the name of the hotel and then some of the training details. So really quickly, can some of you come up with, what type of training might you be going to this hotel to do? If this is the situation you're writing about. Can you use your own career? Like whatever you do for work right now, can you use that for ideas to guide your imaginative thoughts? What do you think? Okay, so Microsoft training, there you go, and hospitality. So when you say hospitality, says Dar, I'm guessing you mean probably customer service. That would be the skill set that you're training, I'm guessing. Teamwork, okay, good. Yeah, so think of the skills itself. Are you going down there to learn how to resolve conflicts? If you're working in human resources, things like this, right? Anyway, you get the idea. Make them up and be as imaginative and precise as you can. Here's a good one too. I think you should express extreme positive or negative emotions. Extreme. That's the key to this one. Is that a good idea ever? Regardless of whether you're taking the CELPIP test or not, should you ever be? If you're angry, are you going to put all sorts of angry words and swear words and yell at people in your email? Or if you're excited about something, are you going to put all sorts of emojis and exclamation marks and so on? And I'd say, no, you're not going to do that in any type of communication, because you'll either anger the reader, they won't want to read you, or if you're over the top happy, sometimes people might not believe that you're being sincere. It's a risk you take. So we want to express our feelings, but we want to do so in a logical way. We want to have reasons to support our choice, but we have to keep it kind of in that very safe middle ground if we want to be taken seriously, for sure. Alrighty, so here's our question. Okay, our choices for this test would have been, again, either keep the vacation and go to the hotel, or, sorry, I got it backwards. Keep our vacation and say to the boss, no, we're not going to the hotel, or we're willing to sacrifice vacation time to go to the hotel. Those are the two choices. So here's the first of two responses we're going to look at. Okay, can you read it through? You notice it's not a true email. This one does not have to be an email. We're writing to John. So who would John be in this situation? It says, hi, John. So who do you think John is, according to this test taker's response? Yeah, John is his boss, right? That's just an assumption because we're supposed to write to the boss. Is it okay to say hi? Or should we be saying, dear Mr. Smith? What do you think? Is it okay and acceptable to say, hi, John? What do you think in this particular question? I think it's okay. Because if you've been working for this company for a long time, you know your boss well enough that he or she, in this case it's a he, actually is contacting you for your input. So I would say that you already have an established working relationship with your boss. And in that situation, it's okay to be less formal. Now, if you had said, dear Mr. Smith, it's okay. You're not going to lose marks. But I just think from a realistic standpoint, most of us would be on a first name basis with our boss after working in a company for a period of time. Most of us. Might be different in your situation. So the best bet is always to think about who's reading your work and choose your words accordingly. But I'd say in this situation, it's perfectly fine. Anyway, with that being said, can you read quickly the test taker's, we don't know his name, so the test taker's answer. Try to figure out which of those two options this test taker is supporting, and then try to find the reasons for that support. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that, and then we'll quickly identify them and guess the score. Okay. So I noticed that the first sentence, it's nice and short, and this is probably what your task 2 would look like. The very first sentence should identify which of those 2 options you're going to be writing about. It's clear here. He says, sure, send us for training. That means we're going to go to the hotel. So we're going to reduce the number of our own vacation days so we can do this training. So we have to know that first before we can read the reasons. Otherwise, we don't have the focus, right? So getting right to the point is great. What I like about, there's quite a few strengths, but first maybe I'll identify for you the reasons for why this writer wants to do the training. And the actual reasons come here in the second paragraph. He's got 2 or 3 that go together. He talks a little bit about how there aren't a lot of company events. So by going to this hotel for training, he's talking about team building and relationship building. So he gets sort of 2 reasons, I guess, one being getting to know the employees better, and the other one is improving our skills. So he's at least given enough details that the raters would say, okay, you've identified your position, you've given us a few logical details, so you've answered the question completely, but the content details are not as developed as I think they could be. So again, what skills? Like, are you going down there to learn how to use Excel in Microsoft Word? I don't know. Are you going down there to learn how to effectively de-escalate conflict if you work in the hospitality sector, to use some of your examples earlier? So adding those details here would really elevate the interest level and make it more clear. And team building, I think, was great. He says we don't have enough company events. If you wanted to, I mean, I hate to bring up COVID at a time like this, but if you wanted to, you could even use current events or recent events to springboard your own ideas. He might say, since some of our recent hires were onboarded during the pandemic, we haven't even met each other in real life, a lot of us, if we continue to work from home. So going to Oceanside Resort in Mexico for the 2 weeks in February would allow us to actually meet each other and develop these working relationships. And then you might even further that and say, employees who are comfortable working together develop trust, and that trust then extends itself to a smoother operation when we return to the office. So just thinking about how else you could get ideas in there. And one way to do it. His whole second paragraph is still okay. I mean, that whole second paragraph still discusses vacation time, but where this writer again falls a bit short on details is, I think that first middle paragraph goes on too long about why vacation days are important to employees. And he doesn't really get to the meat of the question about giving up vacation days for training until he gets to the end. So that could be blended together a little more smoothly, I think. So the content details of those 4 parts of the checklist is maybe the weakest part of this response, but at least the task fulfillment's there. He's even got the word count just fine. What I'd also like to point out, though, is where he really overcomes the content deficits is his vocabulary. So quickly, for time's sake, if you don't mind, I'm going to quickly just underline some words that really jumped out at me. Team lead, overall decrease, lamenting, beneficial, lots of strong use of vocabulary. But what really impressed me, keeping in mind I'm an English teacher, so I know to look for these things. You might not have known to look, but can I quickly take you through his extremely strong ability to create complex sentences with variety? This is a hard thing to do on a test. So this whole paragraph is comprised of complex sentence structures. So this first sentence starts here and it finishes here. So yes, it's long, but it's grammatically correct. And he actually starts the sentence with what we call a subordinating conjunction. Over here, this sentence begins here and it finishes away over here. It's grammatically correct, but he starts this with a subordinate phrase, slightly different way to do it. Over here, again, last sentence, here to here, he starts this sentence with an adverb and on he goes. So he's using all sorts of different verb tenses and complex grammar. So his ability to craft such a variety of complex structures is probably the best we've seen of all responses so far. Now, that doesn't guarantee he gets a level 12. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you right now, he doesn't get a level 12, right? Because he still had some details that weren't fully developed and so on. As I say, it's a balancing act. We have to look at what you did well for content, vocab, grammar, sentence structure, paragraph, and then task fulfillment. So overall, if he didn't get a level 12, What do you think he did get? You got 3 choices left. Is it a 10, a 9, or a 7? And it's the next best thing. Ta-da! This is a level 10. Yeah, level 10 is still really strong. Level 10. So again, this is where you do have great control, consistent control of that complex grammar we were talking about. The vocabulary is consistently more complex too. They rarely make mistakes. And this is one of the key features that differentiates level 9 and 10. Level 9 is starting to emerge with more consistent complexity, but there will probably still be some mistakes, as we saw in that last example. But in this one, believe it or not, there wasn't a single grammar mistake, which is actually quite tough to do. So good for that test taker. Okay, last one. We'll do this quickly because we've only got 5 minutes left here. This is task 2. This is the response survey about the hotel, but it's been structured as an email, and that's okay. You can absolutely use email structure if that's what you want to do. It's not going to affect your score. So you decide. But this test taker's name at the bottom is Larry. He's the CELPIP test taker. Now he's writing to his boss. And as some of you said, well, it depends on your working relationship. So Larry has chosen a formal approach. And he said, dear Mr. Smith, also okay. You know, hi, John, or dear Mr. Smith. It depends on your relationship, but they're both acceptable here. Anyway, can you do a quick skim through, please? I'll give you 30 seconds and then we'll go through the strengths and weaknesses quickly before we log off. Mary, I guess technically you don't even have to address anybody. But I think since responses that have more specific details will score better, if you know you're writing to your boss, adding a name is just a super simple way of getting in one extra detail. Do you know what I mean? Like rather than just say, I would like to give up my vacation time and go to the training. At least you're giving your position, but you know, it takes 2 seconds to come up with a name and you know that the raters like that specific detail. So I would say try your best to address it to somebody. You know, perhaps you know their name or perhaps it's a job title, like attention city official maybe, and then you write your response, whoever it is you're talking to. Yeah, good question, actually. I hadn't really thought about that. Good point. Okay, I hope you were able to read while I was talking. Hope I didn't distract you. But anyway, this person's purpose is given to us in the very first sentence, as it should be, right? It's not crystal clear, I have to admit. I would like to keep the vacation policy. I think he could have said, I'd like to, you know, keep our vacation and not go to the hotel training. Something like that might have been a little bit better. But at least we understand that he's not interested in hotel training. He just wants to keep the vacation as it is. What's really helpful here that Larry does for us is not only does he paragraph, but he uses these transitions of sequence to give the 3 reasons. Firstly, secondly, and finally. So I think that that's really well organized. And then every single reason provided comes up with some supporting details. So the first reason he wants to hold on to is vacation time. If you can see those underlined words, what he's saying here is training would benefit me, sure, but also the company is his rationale. And he's saying, if I'm benefiting the company, that's an extension of work. So in other words, if I'm working, it shouldn't come out of my vacation days. So it's kind of a higher level abstract way of looking at this. And I like that argument. It makes sense to me. The second one is a little bit more concrete and probably a lot of us would have come up with it too. So vacation time is for family. And so he doesn't want to give up his time with his family. So when he introduces family as his main idea, he gives a few examples and says, my wife and my children. So just adding in those little details is really helpful to support a score. The first 2 reasons are all about why giving up vacation time would be bad. His third reason is about how the other option of going to the hotel would be bad. All 3 ideas work. He's saying if we do go to the hotel, there'd be so many distractions like crowds and heat. So when you're answering your survey question, you have some choice here. Either come up with all sorts of reasons to support your opinion, or you can mix and match like Larry did. Come up with a few supportive reasons of your choice, and then point out a weakness or 2 of the other option. Those are both very fair and valid persuasive techniques. So I think that's helpful. Okay, most details here are precise, but there are just a few that could be more developed. You know, when he talks about vacation time is when I spend days building relationships, and my family, oh, they would not like to see me less. So you can see the difference in quality here compared to the other examples we just looked at. Like distractions, like crowd and heat is so much more precise than what we see here. So a couple of areas to develop. His word choice is decent. There are examples, again, of precise language and inaccurate language. So once again, the blue words here on the screen represent his best vocabulary. That seems to be more precise. And you can see there are more examples of suitably used words than there are in orange, where it's a little bit unnatural. A little bit of development, but overall it's pretty good, pretty good. Okay, and again, we know that we've got some organized answers with transitions and so on. The only other thing we maybe can look at is the grammar as you're trying to guess this person's score. So overall, the grammar is pretty strong. There's just a few, again, like minor little issues where it's either a bit awkward or unnatural. But none of these little mistakes make it impossible for us to understand, which is the main thing. Okay, and his tone seems to be pretty on par as well. Anyway, so if you had to guess this one, where would you put him? Level, this is our last one. So let's make this a good one. See if you can guess it right on the nose. We've seen one example of each of these 4 levels. So this final response from Larry is a repeat. So is it another level 7, 9, 10, or 12? So I'm hoping you got the tools now to assess it. We've got all sorts of guesses coming in. So yeah, this is a level 9. Level 9 is, again, it's an effective response. All of your ideas make sense. You've got some complexity emerging. We still have some little errors that are holding it back a little bit, but we're getting there. So that's basically what level 9 is. Okay, we're out of time, and Sarush will have a few words to say before we log off. So I'm just going to zip through these. If you wanted to look on our website, and maybe Patrick can pop some links into the box as we're winding down, but we have a research study that you might want to apply for. It'll give you a free test. Is somebody trying to speak?
Yeah, Brandy, sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah.
So basically now it's actually the reverse. So now we're looking for people that have taken CELPIP recently and are planning to now take IELTS, because we have more people that are this one. So just the reverse, basically.
Thanks for telling me. It was funny before this webinar. Did we not make a joke about this? How sometimes you find out on the go that there's been a change.
Yeah. Totally forgot to mention that. Yeah.
So folks, I will change the slide later. I didn't know that myself, so I apologize. This is incorrect. So thank you for clarifying that, Patrick. We have a partnership too with the National Bank. They will give you some cash back if you open an account with them. So hopefully Patrick will have time to pop that little link into the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have lots of other free webinars. Now, this is the 3rd webinar we're doing with ILIA, with Sarush, in our 4. So we will be coming back next week on Thursday, actually, to do the speaking. So if you wanted to attend that, we'd love to have you. If you can't attend that, we also deliver these webinars monthly, regularly. We do them once each month.
So it's not actually, it's not next week, it's the week after next.
Oh, is it every 2 weeks?
Yeah, exactly. October 5th.
Now I'm all flustered, trying to get through this fast. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's in 2 weeks' time. You're right, on a Thursday. Yeah, and you'll see, if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see the actual dates coming. We've got YouTube shows that you can check out. We're coming back live with CELPIP Live on YouTube next week on Tuesday. If you want help with speaking, Chuck is out at 9:30 in the morning. The name of our channel is at the bottom of your screen. We have podcasts. We've got some writing and speaking materials on our website and free practice tests. On our online bookstore, you can buy additional tests. You can also purchase self-directed programs like these 2. We've got study guides and a common CELPIP error book, even a textbook and a vocabulary book. So all of these materials you can find on our bookstore and browse. There's a little write-up for each. Again, the sale is, I think it's already just about over. So once we email you the promotional code, if you wanted that reading and writing program called Accelerate, you can redeem it on our bookstore. And this is just a screenshot to show you where to put the code. So you click on the product, and then at the bottom of the screen, apply that discount, and it'll make it magically free for you. So you can download the product, but use the promo code quickly because they do expire. So if you forget to redeem it, there's not much that can be done. So use it quickly. And once you download this product, you'll have it for 6 months. So please do use it as well. And here's our customer service info in case you wanted to take a screenshot maybe of this. You've got our customer service email, bookstore website, etc., and all the social media channels. So that's great. Alrighty, I'm going to toss the mic over to Sarush here because I know he has a few closing words before we log out.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brandy. It was a great presentation as always. And I think everybody has learned a lot today. So, I'm going to repeat whatever I told you right at the beginning of this webinar. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. My name is Sarush Hazani, and I have the privilege of serving as the founder and owner of ILIA English Academy. We are an online language school headquartered in Vancouver, specializing in IELTS, CELPIP, ESL French, and Spanish instruction. We have like 28 years of professional background, and currently we're delivering courses to students from all around the world. People from many different countries join our classes. And our dedicated instructors are located in Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, and Montreal, and also Costa Rica, because we also have Spanish classes, and our Spanish teacher is originally from Costa Rica. And we are also proud to be CELPIP Network official member and approved center in Canada, offering both training classes and mock tests to students. We do have lots of different courses in our school: General English, Power English, IELTS, CELPIP, mock tests of IELTS, mock tests of CELPIP, KL preparation, job interview classes, free discussion, English grammar clinic, essay writing for college students and high school students, French and Spanish. And the participants of this webinar will receive free study materials from Prometric, and also you will receive one free CELPIP class from ILIA English Academy. So if you text us on Instagram, I'm going to share the links here. So you can contact us, and we'll tell you how you should attend that free class. And also you will receive an email from Prometric with a code. You can also use that code to contact us. So let me share some of our social media links here with you. This is our Telegram group on CELPIP. The name is CELPIP Up. And the other one is our Instagram link here. I hope everybody can see the links. And also, this is also our website address. Oh, for those of you who didn't attend our listening webinar, which was our first session, we have put that on our YouTube channel. So here is the link. And we will upload the reading one today or tomorrow. So here are the Telegram, Instagram, website, and YouTube links. So yeah, thank you. Patrick, would you like to add something?
Yeah, no, great job to both of you. And yeah, just wanted to mention, so we are looking for people for a research study. It's free to apply, and it's for people that have taken CELPIP recently, and they're looking to take IELTS General before November 1st. So we are looking for quite a few people, and it's free to apply. So if that sounds like you, definitely apply. I'll post the link in the chat. But if you're selected, then we will refund you the cost of your last CELPIP exam. So it's totally free to apply. And best case scenario, if you're picked, you'll get the refund on your last CELPIP exam, which is like, close to 300 or more. So I'll post the link in the chat. And once again, it's for people that have taken CELPIP recently and are going to take IELTS General before November 1st. Perfect.
Perfect. And I quickly, I just saw a question from Aileen privately saying, can we use the promo code for the CELPIP test? And no, the promo code that we're sharing is just for a study product called Accelerate. And it has the promo code itself has nothing to do with the cost of the CELPIP test. So I just wanted to clarify that, as that's important. Great. And thank you, Patrick, for those links. Wonderful. All right. I guess
so. The next one is October 5th, right?
Yeah.
I know it's a Thursday. I just got the wrong Thursday.
Pretty sure it's the 5th. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, so we'll see everybody then, hopefully, for the last chapter of this series, and it's going to be focusing on the speaking section. So I will post one more time the link in the chat to register for the last chapter.
And that's great. And by the way, while you're doing that, I thank you all so much for your participation. I know Friday afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world, it's a difficult time you're tired from a long week, and here you are giving all sorts of really in-depth discussion ideas to contribute. So I do appreciate that, and hope as well that you're leaving today with some tips on how you might be successful on your own writing tests. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Thank you
great,
for joining us.
Job. Okay. Alrighty, Patrick's got the link.
Yeah, I posted the link. So yeah, for those of you that have exams coming up too, best of luck. Get a good night's sleep. And yeah, we have tons of resources, including Sarush. So definitely join his Telegram channel, and then you'll stay connected to the resources available. And we have our YouTube channel as well. So best of luck, and hope to see you at the 4th installment of this series.
Yeah, and that's one about speaking. So we'll finish it off. Sounds great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Nice working with you again, and everybody else. We'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Have a good night or afternoon or morning. Yeah. Everybody. I just had to cover all the bases.
Bye.
All right. See you next time.
Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.